Dillian Whyte's next fight is likely to be in December, according to his promoter, Eddie Hearn. And the three frontrunners to face Dillian Whyte in December are Derek Chisora, Dominic Breazeale, and Jarrell Miller. Now, which direction Dillian Whyte decides to go in depends on what his priorities are. If his priority is to get another big pay-per-view payday, then you would imagine that the Chisora fight or the Miller fight would be, the fights he would choose if he's looking for the biggest payday next. The Chisora rematch would be easy to sell, I think, in the UK, because the first fight was so good between the two of them and it was so close and it was controversial. So controversy always sells. And there was beef in the lead up to that fight, and there's been beef since between the two of them. And beef sells too. So the Chisora rematch, I think, could do pay-per-view right now in December. And also Jarrell Miller, I think, could do pay-per-view in December. Because Miller is a very loudmouth, brash character. Him and Dillian Whyte would be a massive clash of personalities, I think. Neither one of them likes to take a back step. They're both, from rough neighborhoods and what have you. So, yeah, I think that could also sell very well on pay-per-view. But if he wants to go the WBC route, if he wants to become the number one, the first mandatory for Deontay Wilder, then I think the Dominic Breazeale fight would be the best option for him. So it depends what Dillian Whyte wants. Depends what his priorities are at the moment, whether it's to make money in a big pay-per-view or whether it's to get a shot at Deontay Wilder, because he's been chasing that for a long time now. I don't know which route he's going to go. I think all three fights would be interesting fights, potentially very good fights. I personally think that the Breazeale fight would be the easiest for him. I think the Miller fight would be the toughest. And the Chisora fight, would it sell the most? Potentially it would. Potentially. Depending on how explosive the Whyte-Miller press conferences were. I think it's a close call between Whyte versus Miller and Whyte versus Chisora in terms of which would sell better to the British public. Obviously, the British public know Chisora far more, and he's coming off that spectacular win against Takam, so that really helps that particular rematch a lot when it comes to pay-per-view sales, I think. But I wouldn't underestimate Jarrell Miller's ability to hype up a fight and turn his fight against Dillian Whyte, if it were to happen in December, into a pay-per-view bonanza. I wouldn't underestimate Miller in that regard, because he's a good trash talker. He's good at antagonizing and aggravating people. And as I say, beef sells, controversy sells. So I don't know which direction Dillian Whyte is going to go in, but it's going to be interesting. Anyway, there's also this news here that Dillian Whyte is apparently the favorite to face Anthony Joshua in April. You see, this is why Dillian Whyte might not go the WBC route. He might take a pay-per-view fight with one of the fighters I've just mentioned in December and then take on Joshua in April if Joshua can't manage to get the Deontay Wilder fight. Now, the first fight between Joshua and Dillian Whyte was a good fight. It's a fight that I predicted would be a good fight. I was one of the few people who said that was going to be a good fight. I was one of the few people who was really looking forward to that fight. But the rematch right now, it's not high on the list of my priorities. It's not high on the list of fights I'd really like to see in the near future, to be honest with you. And I'm not trying to begrudge Dillian Whyte a payday or anything like that at all. Dillian Whyte has worked incredibly hard and he deserves every single penny that he's gotten out of boxing, and then some. There are very few contenders out there, maybe no contenders out there, who are more deserving of a world title shot against any of the champions than Dillian Whyte. So he deserves a title shot. Let's not get it twisted. Based upon his resume, based upon the fights he's taken over the years. But just as a fan, from an entertainment standpoint, Joshua versus Dillian Whyte 2, I shrugged my shoulders at that fight. Let's be honest. That's not a fight that I'm really desperate to see right now. I want to see Anthony Joshua take on the winner of Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. That's what I want to see. That is my priority in the heavyweight division. That's what I want to see in April. I want to see all the belts consolidated. I want to see an undisputed champion. And once we have an undisputed champion, then we can talk about rematches with Dillian Whyte. And look, if Anthony Joshua loses to the winner of Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder, he can still go and have a rematch with Dillian Whyte. You know? The rematch will always be there because the first fight was a good fight. So the rematch is always going to be there. Right now, for me as a fan, I want to see the unification fight. It is what it is. Now, before I close out this video, let me just touch on something briefly, because I know some people have talked about this and they're going to be bringing this up in the comment section. They're going to be saying that Eddie Hearn is trying to keep it all in-house. He's trying to have Joshua fight other Matchroom heavyweights. He's trying to have Dillian Whyte fight other Matchroom heavyweights. It's all very incestuous. And I agree. Eddie Hearn, where possible, is trying to keep it all in-house. Of course he is. That's what most promoters do. Most promoters try to keep it all in-house when they can. Al Heyman, as Deontay Wilder's advisor, he's tried to keep it in-house as much as possible. Oh, yes, he has. Let's have a look at Deontay Wilder's resume. Artur Spilka, Al Heyman fighter. Chris Arreola, Al Heyman fighter. Gerald Washington, Al Heyman fighter. Luis Ortiz, Al Heyman fighter. Berman Stavern is a Don King fighter, and Don King and Al Heyman are very good friends. This is well known. Eric Molina, Don King fighter. Don King and Al Heyman, very good friends. The only real anomaly, the only fighter which you could say is definitely not an in-house fighter would be Johan Duopa. But the rest of them that Deontay Wilder has defended his title against are pretty much all in-house fighters. Yeah, and look, there is a difference between Don King Promotions and Al Heyman's stable of fighters. There is a difference, but they're very close. Let's not get it twisted. They're very, very close. So, and you know, even if you want to discount the two Don King fighters that he fought, the rest of them are all Al Heyman fighters other than Johan Duopa. So Al Heyman's tried to keep it all in-house. That's what promoters do. Even though Heyman is not officially a promoter, you know what I'm saying. This is what promoters do. They try to keep things all in-house because they want to protect their investments. The only time that Deontay Wilder was going to fight somebody, a contender, who had no connection to Al Heyman at all, was when he was going to fight Povetkin, and that's because it was a mandatory. But the same goes for Joshua, right? He's fighting Povetkin. Povetkin's a mandatory. And to be fair to Joshua and Eddie Hearn, they haven't tried to keep it as in-house as Deontay Wilder and Al Heyman have tried to keep it with regards to fighting contenders. No, they haven't. Have a look at who Joshua's fought. Charles Martin, an Al Heyman fighter, nothing to do with Eddie Hearn. Dominic Brazil, an Al Heyman fighter, nothing to do with Eddie Hearn. Eric Molina, a Don King fighter, nothing to do with Eddie Hearn. Vladimir Klitschko, self-promoted, a K2 fighter, nothing to do with Eddie Hearn. Carlos Takam, not sure who promotes him, but it's certainly not Eddie Hearn. Joseph Parker, Duco Events. Now, that is the one that I would say is kind of in-house. Even though Joseph Parker is not promoted by Eddie Hearn, Hearn and Duco are very close now. Although when this fight was made, they were not particularly close. I would say Hearn and Duco are kind of very close now, but not so much when this fight was made. So to be fair, no, even this wasn't an in-house fight. But if you're talking about from here on in, you know, the likes of Parker fighting White, it's kind of, you could kind of say that passes as an in-house fight, even though Parker is not directly signed to Hearn. It's similar to the King fighters fighting Deontay Wilder. It's kind of in-house, you know? And even the guys that, as I say, Dillian Whyte is facing and the people they're looking to put Dillian Whyte in there with, Dillian Whyte against Chisora, that's an in-house fight. Dillian Whyte against Miller, that's kind of an in-house fight because Miller is on the zone now. He's dealing with Eddie Hearn. The Brazil fight, obviously, would not be an in-house fight, Whyte against Brazil. So that's my response to those people talking about in-house. Wilder has actually got a far greater history when it comes to being in in-house fights than the Matchroom fighters do. Which, you know, a lot of the Wilder fanboys might want to look at. So it is what it is. But will Eddie Hearn try and make in-house fights where he can to protect his investments? Of course he will. Of course he will. And that does get in the way of better fights being made sometimes. Sometimes it does. There's no question about it. I wish, from a selfish fan's perspective, that promoters wouldn't do that so much. But they do, because they're protecting their investments. So anyway, let me know what you feel in the comment section below. Dillian Whyte, likely to fight in December. The front runners being Derek Chisora, Dominic Brazil, and Jarrell Miller. Which fight would you like to see the most out of those three? How do you think he would do against those three fighters? And what do you think about Dillian Whyte versus Joshua, the rematch in April? You know my feeling on Joshua versus Dillian Whyte in April. I'm not too keen on it. But the other three fights, yeah, I think they're all good fights. I'd like to see all of them. I would personally pick Whyte to beat Chisora in the rematch. I'd pick him to beat Brazil. Whyte against Miller. Personally, again, I hope that if Dillian's listening, don't take it the wrong way. And if any of Dillian Whyte's fans are listening, don't take it the wrong way. I would personally pick Jarrell Miller to beat Dillian Whyte. That's my personal view. I could be wrong. Maybe Dillian Whyte will smash him to pieces. But when I look at the styles just objectively, I think Miller would beat him. You know, just my view. I'll go into it in more depth in a different video. But let me know how you guys feel in the comment section below. It's happening. I'm out.